Coming up next, CityNet 30 takes you downtown for the weekly luncheon meeting of the City Club of Portland. Live weekly coverage of City Club is made possible in part by TCI and is produced through the facilities of Portland Cable Access. Now we join the City Club for this week's program.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the City Club of Portland. I'm Pete Heuser, your president. Today we're going to hear from TriMet General Manager Fred Hansen, who is going to talk about his transportation goals for the region. Now, next Friday, you'll want to join us here at the Multnomah Club. That's April 2nd. We'll have an expert analysis of how to survive Y2K computer problems with Lial Sussman and Eric Merrill. I would like to take a moment to report on the financial status of the club. We're now going over the final budget for this next year, and primarily as a result of the success of this last fall's annual fund drive. Despite increasing expenses, we're not going to have to increase dues this next year. We had more members than ever participate in the annual fund drive, and the total amount donated exceeded last year's record of $87,000. I think it's great that those of you who can give more do, so that we can maintain the 50% dues membership for the younger members who otherwise might have difficulty maintaining their membership, and so that club membership is available to others who might not be able to join if the dues were as high as some of those other public service organizations in town. So I thank you for your financial support this past year. And if you are a member who can afford to do a little more and you didn't participate in the fund drive last fall, it's not too late to make a difference. I also want to thank our corporate sponsors who are an intimate part of the club's successes. This quarter's sponsors are Kaiser Permanente, the law firm of Miller, Nash, Wiener, Hager, and Carlson, and Washington Mutual Savings Bank. We continue, of course, to be very grateful for their support. Let's give them a hand. I also want to recognize all of the City Club members who participated in the membership drive over the past 2 months, including board member Sharon Brabenak, who headed the drive. That drive was also a very big success. But don't forget about getting the word out about the City Club. We're always looking for new members that can add to the enthusiasm and expertise that we now have. We have 2 new members in the audience today, I believe. Winslow Wink Brooks, would you stand, please? He's Hillsborough's planning director. And then Rob Masser, who's Hillsborough's director of finance and support services. Welcome to the City Club. Now, before we move into today's program, I want to invite Erwin Mandel, who is co-chair of the Public Services and Safety Issue Committee. He'll give us an overview of what that committee has been up to this year. Erwin?
Good afternoon. Thank you. I don't know about an overview of what we have been up to. What I'd like to do is present an overview of what we're planning to do. The problem and issue of homeless youth in downtown Portland has been one that stirred a lot of emotions and feelings, as it should, because my view is these are all our children and not just from the homes from which they've left. The City Club Public Service and Safety Committee has set up a series of meetings with the principal providers of services to our homeless youth. That is Janus Youth Programs and their Street Light, New Avenues for Youth, Outside In, and Salvation Army Greenhouse. These are going to be monthly on-site visits by the committee, and whoever else would like to join us, by all means. The Citizens Crime Commission, as you know, their report stirred up quite a bit. I think there is nothing like a personal on-site view and interview with the directors of these organizations to really see what is going on, what services are provided, and how they're provided. We already have visited Janus Youth and the Streetlight Program. Let me briefly tell you the schedule that we have planned. We meet the third Wednesday of each month, and these are on-site visits from 12 to 1:15. On April 21st, we will be at New Avenues for Youth. They are at 812 10th Avenue. On May 19th, we're planning a visit to Outside Inn. They're at 1236 Southwest Salmon. And on June 16th, we will be at the Salvation Army Greenhouse, 820 Southwest Oak. As a bow to our guest today, let me point out these are all accessible easily by TriMet, so you can leave your car at home. We do invite all of you, well, I don't know about all of you, I don't think we'd have quite enough room, but more members of City Club to join our committee and to sort of check out and see exactly what is being provided for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Irwin. I think we all appreciate all the things that the issue committees are doing this year. If you're interested in attending a meeting, the club staff has a schedule of when those meetings take place. Now, our board host today is Susan Descamp. Susan is an assistant to City Commissioner Charlie Hales. She'll ask the first question, and then we'll open it to City Club members in the audience. Remember, no speeches. We only have one speech that's to be given today. You've got 30 seconds to ask your question. It's a pleasure to be able to introduce General Manager Fred Hansen for his first address to the City Club. He's now been in his position for 6 months. Before that, he was Deputy Administrator for the EPA as a result of a successful 10-year stint as Director of the Oregon DEQ. Prior to that, he was Executive Director of the Peace Corps in Washington, D.C. I guess he just can't decide whether he prefers living in Portland or back at the Capitol. Hopefully you'll stay here a while before heading back to work in Washington for the Gore, Bradley, Bush, or Dole administration. This is a very challenging time to head up TriMet. I think many of us were very surprised by the defeat last fall of the South-North Light Rail. So the big question is, what's next? A few weeks ago, the City Club's Growth Management and Environment Issue Committee hosted Metro Commissioner Ed Washington, and he spoke about some of the options that are being considered, such as a less expensive light rail line from the Rose Quarter to the Expo Center. Another Metro Councilor, John Kvistad, who is chairman of the region's Transportation Advisory Committee, is also talking about this, and he has it on his committee's agenda for next month. A group of business leaders led by Northwest Natural Chief Executive Richard Wrighton is pushing TriMet, Metro, and the City Council to move ahead on this North-North light rail project, as well as expanded bus service from the south. Now, much of this push is as a result of a likely loss of matching federal money unless something is done right away. Now, last month, as a part of a proposed 3-year plan, Mr. Hansen talked about more frequent buses, new regional corridors, and expanded amenities, which he hopes will dramatically increase ridership. Perhaps he'll talk about that plan today, as well as providing his ideas on an abbreviated and less expensive light rail line. Join me in welcoming Fred Hansen to the City Club.
Thank you, Pete, for the introduction both of this topic, but also of me. It is a great pleasure to be able to be here and to be able to talk about the role of public transit for our region, and specifically the challenges we face and what I hope to be able to do to address those challenges. After 4 years in Washington, D.C., I am very glad to be back in my hometown. But not only to be back, but also to be able to be a part of something I very much believe in. I have been a transit user all my life. I did not take a car back to Washington, D.C. and relied upon public transit there. I'm now fortunate enough to be able to be on a bus line that conveniently takes me from my home to my job in Southeast Portland. I also use transit whenever possible to attend meetings, and let me stress, it is almost always possible to do so. Whether it's to take Max to meet with Washington County Commissioners Tom Bryan, Roy Rogers in Hillsborough, or to be able to take the bus to Milwaukee to meet with Carolyn Tomei, the mayor of Milwaukee. I believe in transit for a number of reasons, but let me give you what I believe are the four most critical. First, our livability depends upon a strong transit system. Every day, every weekday, TriMet buses and trains take 161,000 cars off of the road that would have been there but for our service. We take people from their homes in Clackamas County to jobs on Swan Island. We take people from Gresham to high-tech jobs in Hillsborough and vice versa, to shopping in downtown Portland in the Lloyd Center, to Blazer games and doctor appointments. Remember the song, They Paved Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot? Well, if in downtown Portland alone, we had to accommodate parking for the people who currently use mass transit to get to downtown Portland, we'd have to build 6 towers the size of the U.S. Bank Tower to accommodate that parking. Second, I believe in transit because it provides needed services to people who are transit dependent. Transit plays an important role in getting individuals to jobs, to medical appointments, to shopping. And the availability of transit can remove the necessity to buy and maintain a car, allowing disposable income to be used for basic shelter, food, and health care. And TriMet's door-to-door lift service for the elderly and the disabled provides opportunities to keep people independent, to be able to live in their own homes, to get to jobs, to enjoy the quality of life that comes with being on your own. Third, I believe in transit because it protects the environment. Until October of last year, as Pete said, I was the number 2 person charged by the President and Vice President Al Gore with protecting the environment for this nation. I understand that cars are a major source of pollution in this country. Vehicle emissions not only affect the air we breathe, they contribute to health problems, particularly in the elderly and our children. Smog obscures our view of treasures such as Mount Hood and Mount St. Helens. And vehicle emissions are the number 1 contributor to greenhouse gases that cause global climate change. And fourth, lastly, I believe and respect the quality of people at TriMet. TriMet is known as the premier transit district in the nation. And that reputation doesn't come about by accident. It comes about by a lot of hard work of people who are at TriMet. Let me first pay tribute to my predecessor, Tom Walsh, for it is he who had built a large part of our existing system. I am very proud to be taking over as the head of the organization that has such a successful and valued role in our community. Next, let me pay tribute to 2 of our bus operators and tell you a little bit about why they are so special and what their customers think of them. One customer called recently to tell us about Shirley Carter, who operates on the number 8 line. The caller said a blind passenger with a seeing eye dog was on the bus, and as they approached 5th and Broadway, just near Dunaway Park, that the operator was concerned that that tricky intersection would be at least some risk to that blind passenger. So she got off the bus to make sure that the passenger could cross safely, and which he was able to do. When Shirley got back on the bus, she was greeted with a round of applause from the riders. And earlier this month, we had a call from a customer who recognized Key Spence, another one of our operators, who was at a stop and noticed that there was a child unattended near the stop. He stayed there to make sure that that child was able to be reconnected with his mother, because the mother didn't realize that the child had wandered off. There was a great sigh of relief when that reconnection came. Those examples, I think, tell us a lot about how we can, in fact, make our system work very well for our community. But as often is the case in public discourse, our debates are not as intelligent as we would like. I'm reminded of a time when I was visiting Peace Corps volunteers in North Africa, in Morocco, and after having visited volunteers during the day, I was out at dinner, came out of the restaurant, got into a taxi, and in Morocco, some of you are aware that the principal European language spoken there is French. Having gotten through my PhD exams in French, I thought I would use my language skills. And so as I got into the taxi, I asked the driver in my best French to take me to my hotel. He turned around and mumbled something to me, apparently in French, but incomprehensible. And as one's wont is, I merely repeated my instructions, but a little bit louder. For the second time, the taxi driver, turned around and repeated what apparently was the same message, but equally incomprehensible to me. And so for the third time, I once again repeated my instructions, but yet again a little louder. At that point, the taxi driver threw up his hands in disgust, started the taxi cab, made a U-turn, stopped, turned around, and in perfect English said, "And there is your hotel, monsieur." As I crawled out of the taxi cab in utter embarrassment, it's a lesson that has stayed with me, that sometimes we believe that we are communicating when all we really are doing is repeating what we have said before, but louder and louder. What we need to do is we need to find common ground, not battleground. And I believe that we have an opportunity to be able to do that on the very fine record we have accomplished here in this region around transit. Since the opening of West Side Max, we have seen ridership on in our trains and buses to be able to exceed all projections. In fact, we now have about 24,000 people riding the west side of that line from downtown Portland to Hillsborough or vice versa. And what we are finding is that as opposed to most other transit districts, which see a dramatic drop-off in their weekend ridership, the Saturday ridership on West Side Max is barely below what our weekday peak is. And where most transit systems also see that they do not attract people who are just using it as an opportunity to be able to not just move from one place to another, but as an experience. Those of you who have ridden West Side Max know that families like to take kids and others on it just for the experience of it. But the growth in ridership is not just around our MAX lines. 101 bus lines also provide, in fact, over 3/4 of all the rides we supply on a daily basis. And we're seeing dramatic growth in those lines and the people who ride them as well. 70 million people board buses and trains of the TriMet system every year. We have seen for the last 6 years, every month, an increase over the previous year, same month, in terms of ridership. And when we look at ourselves compared to other cities, we realize that we do have a record to be proud of. Denver, which has, in fact, a larger population than us, we are still seeing ourselves having over 2 million additional riders per year than they do. And even when we look at cities that are about the same size, we see that we have 4 million more riders than San Diego, 6 million than San Jose. And as we have seen, what is most important, that our ridership has in fact outstripped growth in the use of the car. We are the only transit district in the country that is growing ridership faster than the growth in automobile travel. Let me repeat. We are the only transit district in the country that is growing ridership faster than the growth in automobile travel. To continue to grow, we need to be able to be creative about how we are, in fact, meeting community needs. Let me give you 2 examples of what we are doing. Cedar Mills Shuttle is the first. It's an innovative way to serve a unique area that has special transportation needs. The low ridership in the area didn't warrant a full-size bus, So we contracted with Sassy Cab as the most cost-effective way to take residents from their doorstep to connect with Max or other points in the area. The shuttle has been a tremendous success, and we're looking toward how best to continue it. Second, 5 years ago in Sunnyside, we created the Sunnyside Shuttle as a dial-a-ride program where riders were able to arrange in advance to be able to be picked up. As we have seen over the last 5 years that program grow, we have found that we, in fact, can now put in place four regular route buses to serve that Sunnyside, Happy Valley, Clackamas Town Center area. But it is by being able to be creative about how we, in fact, create a new way to attract riders, are we able to find new ways to be able to build upon our system. And of course, there's the Airport Max, another major innovation. This public-private partnership, actually the first of its kind in the nation, involves a private firm, Bechtel Enterprises, to help us build light rail. You will be able to take Max to the airport in the fall of 2001. But the line will serve more than just the airport. It will serve the Portland International Center and Cascade Station, where ultimately we will see 10,000 additional jobs being able to be served by the most effective transit system we can imagine. There are other innovative partnerships, including our very popular Passport program. The Passport program allows businesses to buy transit passes for all of their employees at a reduced cost, reflecting the actual usage those employees make of the transit system. We also have a very successful partnership with the Lloyd District and with the Oregon Health Science University, where we are seeing ridership increase dramatically in both, and we are now building upon those to find new and more successful ways to continue those partnerships. But in spite of these successes, TriMet still faces major challenges. I've been on the job at TriMet only a few weeks when the voters of this region turned down the ballot measure to finance South-North Light Rail. I want to make it very clear to you today, we cannot afford to quit trying because of that vote. We cannot afford to ignore the estimated 500,000 more people who are expected to move to our region over the next 20 years. Even though the circumstances are very different, our situation reminds me something that Franklin Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, once said, quote, "It is common sense to take a method and try it. If it fails, admit it frankly and try another. But above all, try something." In the place of South-North Light Rail, a new concept has emerged from a coalition of businesses and community groups headed by Northwest Natural CEO Dick Wrighton. The new proposal for a line along Interstate Avenue differs from the one on the ballot last November in three very important ways. First, it is much less expensive and goes 1.5 miles further than the original north line alignment called for. Second, it displaces no businesses or residents as had originally been the case in the original planned alignment. And most importantly, it does not rely upon increased property taxes. This new concept includes new ideas for bus service, including HOV lanes, high-frequency service, and improved passenger amenities south to Clackamas County. To the north, the proposal would build light rail from the Rose Quarter north along Interstate Avenue to the Expo Center. The coalition presented its concepts to the TriMet Board of Directors on Wednesday of this week and received from Board President George Passador and the rest of the directors endorsement to begin a study of the new alignment. I won't try to kid you that the new proposal doesn't have a very steep hill to climb. There are several obstacles, including financing, community support, and a full environmental impact statement that must come together before this project can move forward. If we do find a way to bring a proposed project forward that has broad-based community support, our region is still eligible for federal funding. We will be seeking a higher percentage for federal dollars, up to 70% of the cost of the project. A decision on whether or not to go forward must be made within the next 6 months. But do understand that that $250 million being sought for this project from the federal government will be spent somewhere else for light rail. If not in Portland, then somewhere else in this country. Whatever the decision on the interstate line will be, I believe that light rail will continue to be a partner and a part of this future for our region. As we have seen on the west side rail developments, light rail provides a strong ability to affect land use. Investors aren't going to spend $1 million or $10 million of investments around a bus shelter, but they will around a permanent light rail station. The need to expand our transit system is great. Metro Executive Mike Burton likes to point out that every night here in Portland, 75 people sit down to dinner who were not here for breakfast. Those 75 people bring nearly as many cars to add pollution to our air and congestion to our roads. Competing with those cars has always been difficult for transit. Gasoline is now cheaper than bottled water. But when you consider the true cost of driving, it makes our investment in transit very sound. Parsons Brinkerhoff provided analysis on the cost of auto travel for the city of Portland. Their study showed costs that we don't usually think about when we talk about driving. Beyond the obvious costs of fuel, oil, tires, and batteries, we need to add repairs, insurance, depreciation, registration, interest on car payments. And then, of course, there's parking and the time we all sit stuck in gridlock. In addition, there are costs to build, repair, and maintain our roads. And there are costs to society. The cost of air pollution, the cost of paving parking lots and driveways, and the environmental costs from runoff carrying pollution into storm sewers and ultimately into our rivers. When you add it all up, the true cost of driving equals about $1 a mile, which makes transit a true bargain by comparison. My goal as general manager of TriMet is to build on the enormous successes TriMet enjoys. Our goal is not to tell people they can't drive their cars. Rather, TriMet and our community's job is to give people choices, whether that choice is to ride transit, to bicycle, to walk, to telecommute, or to drive their own car. We know that most of our riders are already choice riders. 70% of our riders have a car available to them, but choose to ride transit. The process of building a transit system for the future began several years ago with TriMet's Transit Choices for Livability program. This effort was led by Steve Clark, publisher and owner of community newspapers. Steve Clark's advisory group worked very hard and held numerous community workshops throughout the region to devise a long-term transit service plan to meet the needs of our inner cities and our suburbs. The bottom line is that we must find new ways to provide innovative choices as part of a balanced transportation system so that people will not need a quart of gasoline to buy a quart of milk. In addition, I want to take TriMet in some new directions. First, it's time TriMet explore new markets. In the past, we have focused on moving our own residents. And as we continue to do that, I believe in a superb fashion, it's time to explore new markets, especially the large number of visitors that come to our area each year. I'm sure many of you saw the recent Sunset Magazine article about the West Side Max. It seems that Max, with its public art projects and its the deepest tunnel in North America, has become a tourist destination in and of itself. Second, this summer we will launch a Washington Park shuttle that will connect our Max stop at the zoo with other popular attractions, including the Vietnam Memorial, Hoyt Arboretum, Rose Garden, and the Japanese Garden. Already, about 1/3 of the visitors to the zoo come by TriMet. We want to increase that number and connect them with other parts of the Washington Park. Third, we will take a new approach to bus service along 3 major corridors: Barber Boulevard south to Sherwood, Division east to Gresham, and McLaughlin south to Oregon City. These corridors will be targeted for substantial service enhancements, increased service during the day, evenings, and weekends, as well as a bus priority system that will help buses move through traffic faster. Fourth, we want a new focus on our customers. 20 years ago, TriMet had about 800 bus shelters. Today, we have about 800 bus shelters. That's only 1 shelter for every 10 stops, which means most of our customers must stand in the rain and wind waiting for their bus. We need to put a new emphasis on giving our customers a quality experience. This means more shelters, lighting to make shelters safe, more frequent cleaning of shelters and stops, and better customer information. We will launch a pilot this coming year, a pilot project to provide not only printed schedules, but actually also the actual time of arrival of the next bus or train at select sites around our region. Today, I want to issue a challenge to all of you in this room. On your table today, you will find a ticket for a ride on TriMet. I want to give you a chance to use that ticket to go somewhere you haven't been yet by bus or by train. What I ask is that you give our service a try. You might take Max to Hillsborough, where you can stop along the way and see the public art in the stations. Or you might visit the Oregon Zoo. You might attend an event at Rose Garden or Civic Stadium, or go shopping at the Lloyd Center or at Saturday Market. Whatever your destination, give it a try. Find out for yourself that leaving your car at home is easy. You can take steps to preserve our livability, and you don't need to take transit every day to make a difference. Finally, I want to leave you with a look at the future of transit in our region. In the next 10 years, I envision that buses will run much more frequently on all of our schedules. If you live on a major bus route or along a major corridor, you will know that your bus will be coming at least every 10 minutes. Reliability, predictability, and convenience, getting close to the goal of a bus always in sight. In the next 10 years, I envision low-floor buses on all of our lines that make it easier for the elderly and people with disabilities, and also for everyone else to board more quickly onto our system. In the next 10 years, I envision bus riders finding improved sidewalks and crosswalks for convenient and safe access to bus stations. The stations will have shelters, seating, landscaping, lighting, and space for community information. Riders will find schedules, maps, ticket vending machines, telephones, bike lockers, and public art. And when they get on the bus in the summer, they will find a comfortable, air-conditioned ride. In the next 10 years, I envision transit centers with concessions where you'll be able to buy a newspaper, get a latte, drop off dry cleaning, get money from the ATM, or a host of other activities, usually requiring a separate auto trip. In the next 10 years, I envision a fleet of buses that run on batteries or other alternative fuels with significantly less pollution and noise. But most importantly, in the next 10 years, I want more transit choices for our region. The streetcar in Portland will extend well beyond Portland State University. Commuter rail in Washington County will link Wilsonville with the West Side Max Line. We will have a tram connecting Oregon Health Science University and new medical facilities in North Macadam. And we'll have a commuter ferry plying the river, the Willamette River. In short, we will continue to have a comprehensive, integrated, exciting transit system which every part of the nation can only dream about. My goal is that the TriMet system becomes something that makes us all proud. Not just our regular customers, but those of you who may never or only occasionally take a bus or a light rail ride. I want everyone to feel that you can tell visitors or relatives to ride a TriMet bus or take Max and feel that they will have a safe, reliable, comfortable, and convenient trip. TriMet gets you from where you are to where you want to be. A smart choice, part of the transportation system, a valuable part of our community, making this a better place to live. Thank you for inviting me today. I hope to see you soon on the bus or on the train, because how we get there does matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Of course, we're all so interested in light rail, and I want to get right back to that. The North-North light rail plan that we're looking at now, obviously there's the transportation element, but I'm real concerned about, or would like to hear your ideas about how this would invigorate and enliven that whole network of neighborhoods and commercial districts along Interstate Avenue.
Thank you. The opportunities that come with light rail investments are incredible. We have seen along the east and west, existing east and west max lines, almost $2.5 billion of investment that have taken advantage of those lines. What we would see in the North Line, if it is to become a reality, is, I think, a major reinvigoration along Interstate Avenue. Not one that is, in fact, going to be tearing out businesses or tearing out homes, but rather to be able to build on what I think is an area of the city that has been neglected for too long, that has an opportunity to be able to be redeveloped, to be able to provide for affordable housing, to be able to provide for retail and commercial activities, and ultimately to be able to connect people to where we do see many, many commuters coming from, and that is across the Interstate 5 bridge. Question coming up.
Yeah, Leslie Hildula. I had to walk to get here.
That's better than driving a car.
Yeah. So my question is about the Fairless Square. Right now it is so small that I can walk pretty much everywhere it covers just as fast as it gets me there. And I work in the Portland building. And so could you talk about the pros and cons of expanding the Fairless Square, for example, so I could take it so it would cover the Mac Club?
The issue of Fairless Square is an important part of the transit picture. When we look at Fairless Square, we recognize that in the downtown core area, it has provided a lot of opportunities for people to be able to get around during the day when normally they might need to use an automobile. And by doing that, we are then able to encourage more people to take transit both to and from their work and use transit in a broader context. The ideas of expanding Fairless Square have focused less on the expansion west, but more moving toward the Lloyd District. Those areas are, in fact, one that we are working very closely with the City of Portland and the Lloyd District to be able to bring to fruition. The concept of being able to provide Fairless Square makes good sense, but recognize that the costs are going to have to be borne somewhere. Those costs are not ones that are somehow free. They are a part of what we at TriMet are wanting to be able to be a partner in terms of expanding our system, but it's also ones that we are looking at the City of Portland and the region to be a partner as well. My guess is we'll see expansions of Fairless toward Lloyd or into the Lloyd District relatively soon. And then beyond that, we're going to have to talk more about how to fund those improvements.
Ned Look, member. First of all, I want to point out that two of us beat Ray to the microphone today.
That is a first.
But my question, Fred, is this plan of Dick Wrighton's to go to the Expo Center, what does that do, or does it jeopardize eventually getting to Vancouver, Washington?
Clearly, moving as far as the as Expo Center does not get us all the way across the river in terms of where many people have seen the bottlenecks on the interstate bridge, and certainly as we see the number of commuters coming from Clark County. But it is a very important step in that direction. It is nearly in the line of sight of Clark County, and it seems to me that if the project is built, that it will ultimately lead to a logic that will be inescapable, and that is to have Clark County conclude that it is very important to be able to connect with our existing light rail system.
Thank you very much.
Ray Polani, a City Club member. If I may, a very beautiful, needed vision. We commend you. Relative to the...
Thank you. The first two.
Relative to the new north-south light rail, we understand that there is a contribution from TriMet expected, around $20 million, I think. How can we be sure that this will not in any way jeopardize the proposed long-needed expansion of the bus service?
Ray, there are, most importantly, a comprehensive transit system must be an integrated transit system that has different elements. It is not a system that can be all one thing, all another. In our judgment, the ability to be able to have rail be an important part, but not the sole part, is very fundamental. So the commitment to be able to continue large investments in expanding our bus system, which, as I said earlier, carries approximately 3/4 of our riders, is absolutely key. However, when we look at the size of the proposed TriMet investment here, and ask ourselves, if we put that all into expanded bus service, what would be the difference in ridership? On day one, it would be about the same level of ridership. But the difference is that by expanding with rail, what we are able to accomplish is opportunities for redevelopment along interstate, the opportunity to be able to ultimately see our way toward the north into Clark County, ultimately to be able to, in fact, have a system that does not need to be replaced every 16 years as buses, but a permanent light rail line that allows us to be able to build and redevelop throughout that north-northeast area. As a result, it is a very smart investment, not the sole investment, because our bus system is a very key element. But it is an element that, if it does come forward, is something that does make good sense from a transit standpoint.
Erwin Mandel, City Club member. I have what is probably a naive question that may have already been considered by the transit experts. But when you talk about the terminus for what you call the north-north rail system being put in, what I have read is that it is to be connected with Max at the Rose Quarter. It seems to me that it would be logical to not just connect with Max, but to bring it into downtown and use the 11th Avenue turnaround to send it back out. That way, the people in the North Portland would certainly have a direct route to jobs and whatever else they're doing downtown. Of course, there may be a very good reason why this isn't feasible, but certainly during peak hours, it would seem to be a good idea.
First and foremost, when we use the word connect, and by the way, I think it's at least the term that I prefer for describing the line is the interstate line. That when we talk about connect, it is merely the connecting of the rail line. We would certainly expect that any trains that would travel would in fact travel on across the steel bridge into downtown Portland. Turnarounds are still something that is being discussed. The one at 11th is a logical place. There are other potentials. If this project moves forward, that's the type of work that needs to be detailed. But let me stress that I think in all the preliminary thinking that the trains would not merely stop at the Rose Quarter, but rather would connect actually to the existing MAX line and use at least a portion of it for travel.
I thought that was too obvious for the experts to overlook. Thank you.
It wasn't, but thank you for allowing me to clarify that.
Chris Smith, club member. Fred, I work for Tektronix and just recently transferred from the Wilsonville to Beaverton campus. And I'm not sure if I'm more excited by the fact that that represented a bit of promotion, or that when I got there they put this sticker on my badge, so I'm now a passport commuter and can take bus and MAX to get to my job.
Terrific.
Pretty difficult in Wilsonville. My question is about expanding the passport program to other applications. I'm involved in the Transportation Committee in Northwest Portland, where one of our biggest transportation problems is parking. And in fact, we even have a city-paid consultant helping us sort out our parking problems. One of the possible tools to help manage parking that's been identified by Doug Capps, that consultant, is to expand the passport program to employers in Northwest. The problem is that our employers tend to be very small. They're a restaurant with 12 employees or a retail shop with a few employees, and the passport program is for large employers. We proposed to TriMet that a coalition be formed of employers in the neighborhood, and the coalition be able to sponsor the passport program. My question to you is, would you like to comment on that? And second, would you be willing to fast track the decision-making process on that as a creative solution to transit needs?
A little personal lobbying on behalf of what I believe fundamentally is that we need to create a transit system that meets needs of people throughout the region with a not one-size-fits-all, but rather to be able to craft different approaches in different settings. Clearly, the passport program is one of our most successful tools to be able to ensure that TriMet receives basically the fares that we would normally have received, but in a way that encourages more and more ridership, which we think is tremendous. The ability to be able to work with small businesses through our transit check or other programs is there. The idea of a coalition of a group of businesses in the northwest area of Portland is something that we would be very open to and would be happy to be able to sit down and discuss. If we can work out and work through those issues, I don't think any of us stand on the idea that we should be anything but quick about decisions.
Kent Duffy, City Club member. My evaluation of why your measure didn't pass in the fall was because we allowed the support to get fragmented by a series of small single issues to take people's votes away from it. And I guess my key question to you is that I think that it needs to be viewed as part of a comprehensive system and very clearly presented to the public, as though it's not just light rail, it's overall transit within the area. And my question to you is, do you share that view? And if you do, what are you doing to get that out to the public?
The answer in terms of being able to have transit be seen as a comprehensive part of our community, and that there are integrated parts of that, whether it be rail, whether it be bus, whether it be other approaches, is absolutely key to be able to have a system that works. I believe very strongly that the message that I am delivering today is one of a comprehensive approach. Although I cannot speak to the ballot measure process last year, I was here about 3.5 weeks when the vote actually came. In fact, Larry Hildenbrand from the Oregonian called me up and said, well, you've only been here about 4 weeks and you've already lost a ballot measure. Although I cannot speak to that, clearly the goal is to be able to articulate in an understandable fashion how these are not standalone pieces, but rather that they are a part of a system. And that any part of the country, when I have traveled this in my previous job, no part of the country was very successful with transit unless they had a fully integrated system, one that we have taken very significant steps toward creating, but that we have not yet fully created.
Hello, Heather Komet, City Club member. I have a question in regards to not necessarily the expansion of the bus system, but the betterment of it. I live on a bus line, and we actually successfully had a bus shelter removed from in front of my home because of the debris and the lack of safety it represented. I'd like to know what you're intending to do to better the existing bus system so that if you do expand bus shelters, there doesn't result in the same effect it did in past years.
Well, first and foremost, I think one of the things that we all should be very, very proud of is that when people refer to taking the bus, and for those of us who are regular bus riders, you don't refer to as just the bus. You refer to it as my bus. Or my operator. There is a tremendous sense of connection that riders have with their actual bus line and their operator. We believe that that has to extend to all elements of that ride, whether it be the shelter, where we are looking toward installing more lights, where we are looking at, in fact, substantial improvement in the number of times it's cleaned. We actually have a very exciting partnership with SOLVE, Stop Oregon Litter and Vandalism, whereby we are having adopt a bus shelter program with over 1/3 of our shelters already having been adopted and having then a community looking after that shelter, letting us know if it's dirty, letting us know if there's graffiti on it, other sorts of things to be able to make that work better. With our new low-floor buses, we are seeing that, and the curb extensions, we're seeing that it's, in fact, much easier for people to be able to board. A whole series of things we are doing to be able to deliver on the commitment that the system isn't just when you're on the bus or the train, but a part of what that experience is as you are waiting for it. Is it safe? Is it lit? Do you have information? Those things are a part of what I think has to be a quality transit experience. And we are fully committed to make that a very good one. Thank you.
Hi, Doug Marker, City Club member. I understood you to describe the new north-north proposal to be longer than the segment proposed in the ballot measure and maybe even cheaper than what was proposed. What has changed in the design to bring the cost down? And could that have been, were those alternatives discarded for the original proposal for the ballot measure?
First, let me be clear. The proposal that's being brought forward by CEO of Northwest Natural, Dick Wrighton, and the communities in the area is a proposal for us at Metro, or pardon me, at TriMet, for Metro and for the City of Portland to consider whether this makes sense. So it's still at the proposal stage coming from those entities. The concept, as I had been asked by Dick Wrighton, to be able to sketch out what a line could look like if it went from Rose Quarter north, and with the direction from Dick to say, and to be able to reduce the overall costs of that. The portion that is being talked about by being able to run on interstate, and again, this is a proposal only, means that there is no new right-of-way that must be acquired. There is no displacement of any residences or businesses, nearly 150 of which would have been displaced along the previous alignment. But there are also drawbacks to the new alignment as well. It doesn't serve the Elliott neighborhood quite as well because it's further away from the higher level of activity up on Broadway or Weidler. It doesn't serve one of the hospitals. It doesn't quite achieve as much. So this isn't as if this is an idea of why couldn't you figure that out before, but rather it is a trade-off. The previous alignment probably had more direct involvement in the lower part of that, the area closer to Rose Quarter, to be more directly serving certain neighborhoods that are right there. This alignment doesn't, but it does have the opportunity for redevelopment along interstate, particularly that lower area around where the grain elevators are and Rose Quarter is. And so those are the choices that the community, the city council, the Metro JPAC process, others are going to have to wrestle with to say, does this really make sense? But those cost reductions are coming by some of those changes, as well as some fewer amenities along the way. Instead of solid concrete on all of the track alignments, it would have concrete ties with aggregate in between. Those are issues that the community is going to have to wrestle with and decide, does it make sense?
I'm Margaret Fine, and I'm interested in the proposed Welfare to Work project. And I wanted to know if you could talk about it a little bit, particularly from two perspectives. One is with regard to accessibility issues to impoverished communities, and also is with regard to strategies that are used to identify the needy communities, in particular with respect to identifying social service agencies that may be assisting in getting to those communities.
It's a very, very important program. As I like to be able to say, that welfare to work, the two in that statement is TriMet. We are the providing of the transportation to be able to get people from welfare to work. And to be able to do that effectively, we are working very closely with a number of the social service agencies to be able to identify how best to accomplish that. We are, in fact, setting up a number of different processes to make sure we've really identified how best to be able to do that service. Do we have, for example, whether or not we have, for example, proper accessibility for our buses? Do we find ourselves being able to provide the kind of lift service or other things that may, in fact, be off shift for a number of those jobs? Those are the things that we think are absolutely critical, and what we want to be and are committed to being is a full partner with those individuals who know best the programs that are at hand to make sure that our transit system really does mean that too in welfare to work works.
Dan Goldie, member. Fred, as you know from your appearance before the Economic Roundtable, there's still a lot of people here in the community who have serious doubts about the economic efficacy of light rail, particularly in the transit system. I wonder if you would comment then on an issue that has come up many times here, which is the importance of maintaining and utilizing the housing infrastructure already in the central city at a time when many of the new jobs are being produced in the outside periphery on campuses, the high-tech industries, and the key importance of the transit system, including light rail, of getting people so that they can go on living in the central city and get to the jobs in the periphery.
Dan, I'm not sure you didn't make my point for me. The issue of being able to connect where people live to where they work, to where they need to be able to do meet other essential services, whether it's shopping, dropping kids off at daycare, picking up or dropping off dry cleaning, whatever it all might be. What transit is able to provide is an opportunity to be able to have a vibrant city, and we clearly recognize that the large amount of housing stock we have within the Portland area is an important resource that we must fully utilize and redevelop as a way to be able to ensure that our goals of compact growth, of a human scale growth for this region are able to be maintained. To do that, we need to be able to have an effective transit system that does what we have been able to see that rail already does for this region. Don't forget, we are a national model for being able to bring in light rail projects on time and on budget, and most importantly, to be able to deliver the ridership and the land use effect that comes from those investments. An expansion of the rail system will do even more to be able to ensure that we have housing, including the very important component of affordable housing, to be a part of our mix of the richness of this city. And if we do not have that kind of transit that connects people to every place they need to be, that we will have in fact ensured that we will become so auto-dependent that we will be polluting ourselves out of a healthy air shed. We will be doing things to be able to spend more and more time in our automobiles stuck in gridlock,
and be able to decrease the quality of life that I think we here in the greater Portland metropolitan region value so highly. It is absolutely essential.